But no matter how feminine a gay man is, he can never be a mother. I was outed by a gay blogger.
I was outed by a gay blogger. Hilarious. I'm out here drinking that Woca-Cola. Just kidding, it's water. I don't drink Coke, but I do drink woke. Hey babies, welcome back to my channel. I'm David, you're David, we're all David, and today on Dismantling Hate, we are going to have a look at the YouTube channel called Them Before Us. That's right, it's giving non-binary realness, which I do appreciate. Now, the title of this video is called Raised by Two Gay Men, and I think children deserve a mother and father. Samantha's story. So there's going to be two pieces of content we're going to look at today. We're going to look at this really short 2-minute video about Samantha's story, and then we are going to look at an ABC News Australia video from 9 years ago that is called Child of Lesbian Parents Opposes Gay Marriage. So today we're going to dismantle some homophobia, it seems like, but I'm really interested to know the perspective of folks who grew up in a queer home, specifically led by two same-sex parents, and why that has led them to believe that people shouldn't be doing that. All right, so I'm gonna slide on over, we'll roll the intro, and then we'll get started. Let's go. And like, it is walking the line of like freedom of speech. You know what? If we're gonna be out here and we're gonna be vulnerable on this channel here together, you and me, right now, right here, yeah. We should really be talking about that because that's harmful. All right, I'm ready. Are you ready? It's okay if you're not. We'll take a deep breath. It's gonna be okay because we're gonna do it together. Roll the transphobia. Okay, Samantha Weissing, take us to church.
Hello, I am Samantha, and I am 39 years old. I was born in 1984, and I was raised by two gay men. For the first 8 years, arguably the most formative years, I had no mother in my life. I had a very difficult time at that age articulating my desire to have a mother. I fantasized about having a mother, and I would notice references to mothers and motherhood in pop culture, in movies, in songs on the radio. And I had this deep longing to have a mother and to understand what being a mother was all about and what it meant.
This is really interesting because it's completely valid, right? If you are a child in a relationship with same-sex parents and you were not the same biological sex as your parents, I do believe there would be a bit of a disconnect there. And a lot of studies throughout the years have shown that the most deepest connection is often with the same-sex parent of a child. So it does make sense, and her experience is absolutely valid. And all of the references in pop culture too, right? People use very like finite language. Like I think from the teaching perspective, a lot of teachers would say, give this to your mom and dad instead of give this to your parents. Give this to your humans at home, which is what I would say in a classroom setting. But it stands to reason that it would be distressing for a child to have same-sex parents. I'm interested to see where this is going because there are struggles that of course aren't equal, but are as meaningful and difficult to navigate with opposite sex parents as there would be same-sex parents. So there would be challenges on either side. Just being a kid is hard. Being a child is hard. It's difficult. It's hopefully one of the most challenging times in your life, and things just get better as you grow older, but that's not always the case. So, let's keep going.
I loved my two gay dads very dearly, and I was very attached to them, and I appreciated them helping me and taking care of me. But no matter how feminine a gay man is, he can never be a mother. And I missed out on having a daily connection with my biological mother. And during those very impressionable first few years of my life, it changed me and who I am as a person. It has affected how I relate to my children. And in subtle but noticeable ways, it affects how I relate to my husband and to other women in my life.
Yeah, that would make sense. That seems logical to me. But if we unpack this a little bit, like the subtext of where we're coming from, her saying it was taking her away from a daily connection with her biological mother, it's not really our place to discuss the intricacies of her situation in particular, but her purporting her story and sharing that story online kind of requires us to have some of that background information before we can make an informed judgment, because was her biological mother there and around, and her two parents weren't allowing her to have that connection, or she could have been adopted for millions of different reasons. Like, we need to know more. In the next minute, I don't think we're getting it, but I don't know, Samantha.
I have been deeply shamed and mocked because of my advocacy against gay marriage and gay parenting. I've been told that I should be grateful to have two parents that love me, and
yeah, it does make sense. Like, you should be grateful, but I think that is a little bit minimizing of her experience, because her struggling with same-sex parents is valid, and I'm sure there's other people who share these same stories as well. But there are other people who struggle with parents who have same-sex parents. I just think struggle is part of the human experience, especially when it comes to parenting. I don't know if it's necessarily appropriate to whittle it down to only that of same-sex parents, because I know that there has to be folks out in the world that didn't have these adverse realities when it comes to same-sex parenting. So yes, you should be grateful for good parents, but it's not really appropriate to say that your experience isn't valid. So I understand where she's coming from, but I kind of disagree maybe with the idea of saying that no parents should be same-sex, or that no queer people should be able to get married, because that's just like a sweeping generalization that gets you nowhere, in my opinion.
I know from experience that every time gay couples have or acquire a child, that child is deprived of the love and nurturing that comes with a daily connection with their biological parent. And
well, but then, okay, yeah, you start to follow the lines of logic and it kind of falls apart, right? Because you're not really taking... There's so many different variables and situations where people can be adopted, and maybe unfortunately a parent is no longer living and a child is to be adopted. So then it's not really the onus on the same-sex parent of, you're robbing them of their connection with a parent that just lives down the street. And it almost makes it seem like the same-sex parents are engaged in thievery in order to acquire, as she noted, these children. And it can't be every time. No one thing is true for any group of people. So, yeah.
And the love and nurturing of one of the genders that's necessary.
There is a little bit of research, like I mentioned before, of the impact of the same-sex parent, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a parent. It just has to be an influential adult in a child's life that is the same sex. That can be really meaningful to developing brains as kids grow up. So that definitely is a thing, but it doesn't necessarily have to come from a parental role. You know, it takes the village, or whatever the hell people say. Like, that can be grandma or grandpa or your aunt or whoever, right? Building a community around your kids, it is a good thing. They should have lots of safe people in their life that you provide to them, that you surround them with. It's just part of good parenting, in my opinion.
Child to thrive. It's not discrimination for the state to uphold a child's right to have the perfect gender balance in the home. It is not an adult's right to have access to a child just because they want one. And it is a child's right to be raised and provided for by the two people that are responsible for their very existence.
Like, sure, but what if they don't want them? What if it is your right as a parent to conceive a child, to give birth to a child, and say, I don't want a child. That's totally fine. Is it morally or ethically, however, that's not what we're going into here today, but it is within your right to not be a parent if you don't want to be a parent. And honestly, thank God for that, because if my parents didn't want me, I don't think I would want them as my parents. I want parents who want me. So if I was looking at a heteronormative couple and a gay couple, and the heteronormative one didn't want a child, but the gay ones did want a child, where are you going to go? You're going to go for the people that want you. And that's not to say that all parents who set up their children for adoption don't want them, but in that situation it would prove her a little bit fallacious here, if I do say so myself. Interesting. Okay, so that's just to get our beaks wet here, as it were. Now we're going to go to the ABC News Australia video. Okay, so next up is child of lesbian parents opposes gay marriage from 2015, but it was published even longer. Oh God, no. 2015 was 9 years ago.
I know what it's like to perform through pain.
Oh, that's depressing. Okay, anyway, yeah, we're going to listen to ABC News Australia, which usually has some gems, so let's get into this.
Academic and Testimonial Council of the International Children's Rights Institute. As you heard in Tom Eagleton's story, she's a fierce opponent of same-sex marriage, despite being raised by same-sex parents and describing her mother as a loving gay parent. She's in Canberra to lobby against same-sex marriage. Katy Faust joins us now from Parliament House. Thanks for being there.
To lobby against same-sex marriage, that's wild. That's wild. To be on the news. And that's how you're introduced and you're standing there with a smile. That's something. Let's see what her argument is.
Thanks so much for having me.
Have you actually managed to speak to any Australian politicians yet?
We did. My partner in crime, Millie Fontana, who is a resident of Melbourne and also raised by two mothers, and I had a chance to speak with a couple members of Parliament yesterday.
Not the Prime Minister so far?
No. He hasn't called yet.
Now, how is it?
I wonder why. And also underneath where her name was, it said traditional marriage advocate. If we start looking at traditional marriage and the idea of ownership over another human being, like that gets gross really fast. Yikes.
The daughter of lesbian mothers has become a leading opponent of gay.
The daughter of lesbian mothers has become the proponent against something. It is a nice accent. It's comforting, but his words are probably not going to become. I guess we don't know where he stands. He might be argumentative. We can only hope. Okay.
Marriage. How does that work?
Well, simply because I recognize that while my mother was a fantastic mother, and most of what I do well as a mother myself, I do because that's how she parented me, she can't be a father. Her partner, an incredible woman, both of these women have my heart, cannot be a father either. Children have a right to be in relationship with their mother and father whenever possible. And
whenever possible, though. Whenever possible. There are so many things when it comes to adoption of a child that things are not possible. That's usually the context that leads you to the difficult choice of putting a child up for adoption, right? It's all of these whenever possibles. Because yes, I would agree that wherever possible, a child that is born should be raised by the two people who have created that child. I think that's the best case scenario, honestly. I do. From a neuroscientific perspective and from a child developmental perspective, sure. But there are so many circumstances that present themselves that the best case scenario is not possible. And the next best scenario would be to put a child up for adoption. Now, what I believe her subtext is here is that if you have come to the difficult decision to put a child up for abduction, why can't I say that? I believe her subtext here is that if you're giving up your child for adoption, you're looking at a gay couple, you're looking at a straight couple. She thinks that the better option is to give to the straight couple. Now, that's where I disagree, because the way that our lives go and the way that our brains develop is about 10% genetics and about 90% epigenetics. So that just means that nature accounts for about 10% and nurture accounts for about 90%. So many things can happen in our lives that come down to where we are, who we're with, what we're doing, what the environment is, what we're eating, the amount of sun, the school, the sleep, like everything, all the variables in our lives account for a lot more of the way we turn out versus just what you're born as and your genetic makeup. There's a lot of different variables and moving pieces here that come into play when we're figuring out how people become who they are. So yeah, it doesn't matter if you give to a straight couple or a gay couple. It really doesn't matter. Fascinating.
Society, we shouldn't normalize a family structure that requires children to lose one or both parents to be in that household.
Now, trying to sway the US Supreme Court to rule against gay marriage, you wrote to Justice Anthony Kennedy before that vote, and you said, you used to say, I'm happy my parents got divorced so I could get to know all you wonderful women. Now you seem to be saying that was all a lie.
Well, there's a lot of pressure on children of gay parents to please their parents, to sort of carry the banner forward for them. And you can read about this not just in conservative publications, but even books like Families Like Mine, which was publicized by a pro-gay marriage
daughter of gays, and she admitted, and several of the kids in that book admitted, that it's very difficult to be honest about this because of the political pressure surrounding this topic. There's several children that have contacted me, even since I started writing about this, saying, I agree with you, but I'll never come out and speak about this publicly because my relationship with my parent is too tenuous.
Like, it does make sense that there would be an amount of social pressure from you woke lefties. Yeah, I'm out here drinking that Coca-Cola. Just kidding, it's water. I don't drink Coke, but I do drink woke. But no, I understand what she means here is that there would be a little bit of pressure because you might come off as homophobic to say that, hey, I didn't have a good experience with two dads or two moms. And that's fine. Share your story. Get it out there in the world, girl. But we have to be able to recognize that there would be people that had good experiences with two dads or two moms. And there's a world of people that had bad experiences with a mom and a dad. So does that mean that those folks that had those poor experiences with opposite sex parents should be writing books and going on TV to advocate against the right for opposite sex couples to have children? No, that's not. No, that's not how this works, girl. Wow.
Did you find God somewhere in this journey?
Oh, wouldn't that just lace this up nice into a perfect little bow here as if she found Jesus? Please say yes. We know. Is she going to say yes?
Anti-gay marriage?
Well, I was not raised a Christian, but I did become a Christian in high school.
And did that change things? I mean, did you decide that homosexuality was against the...
Jesus, prep the Kylie kit. Nope. Said that backwards. Kylie, prep the Jesus kit. Okay. Oh, they're not even together. I thought they were. Oh my God.
Scriptures against God's will, something of that nature?
Well, it took a long time, honestly, for me to get on board with what biblical sexuality says, because there's a very fierce protectiveness.
Biblical sexuality. Girl, you lost me.
I think that all children have for their parents. But what I was delighted to find when I read scripture is that God has an incredible heart for the orphan, and that he's very concerned with the plight of children. And that lines up very much with where we need to go in this discussion, which is focusing on the rights of children primarily, as opposed to emphasizing the desires of adults, which tend to take center stage when we're talking about this issue.
Now, after your parents divorced, because you originally had a father and a mother, they divorced. Your father, you say... Your father. ...went off with other women. Why have you focused your main criticism on the homosexual part of the equation and not...
That's so funny. This is okay. Yeah, sure.
Well, I think that I'm pretty fair in my statements to say that whether you're heterosexual or homosexual, children have rights.
Okay.
And adults, the onus needs to be on adults to conform to the rights of children, rather than children fitting into an adult's lifestyle.
Okay.
And certainly.
Okay.
I don't.
Stop talking. Okay. I can agree with that. Your child doesn't have to complement you in the way that you live your life. You do have to modify things in order for your child to exist happily. I do believe that they're not just an accessory that you acquire at some point and they just mold to your life. You're going to have to make sacrifices and changes. But I think she's grouping in sexuality as a lifestyle choice, and sexuality is definitely not a lifestyle choice. That's not something that's changeable. But that's what Jesus people most often believe, isn't it? Is that you're just making this choice and you're sinning on purpose. And that's where you lost me. I don't remember her name, but it doesn't matter. Let's keep going.
And certainly, I don't think that homosexuals are responsible by any means for the crisis that we face in America when it comes to family structure these days. Absolutely, heterosexuals have led the way on that charge. I got into this discussion primarily because what I heard from the gay lobby was that children don't care who's raising them, right? That children are just fine if it's two men or two women. And the reality is that anybody that's talked to a child who has lost a parent, whether through divorce, abandonment, third-party reproduction, or death, kids absolutely care.
Third-party reproduction. Okay, yeah, is this the IVF conversation? Wow. This is 9 years old, right? So she's kind of like the Blail tracer of these people that we look out and see everywhere now with the MAGA hats and stuff. Interesting. I wonder where she is now. Fascinating.
Structure matters to children. And so I heard the LGBT lobby saying it doesn't care. They don't care. And I don't think that that's reality.
Okay, you also were motivated politically once President Obama announced his support for same-sex marriage, and you set up an anonymous blog called Ask the Bigot. Why did you do that? What did you call it that to start with, and what happened when you did it?
Yes. Well, strangely, the URL wasn't taken for that web name. Not sure why, but it...
Yeah, you're sure, but girl, okay.
Kind of born in an angry moment.
Katy Faust.
I'm not really a confrontational person, but what happened when Obama evolved is, to me, it felt like media was free to play the bigot card. So now everybody that doesn't support gay marriage is a bigot, right? Because either you're isolated and you don't know any gay people, or you're indoctrinated, or you're homophobic, or you're...
Well, yes. If you don't support I mean, like, what does bigot mean, right? It just, we could boil that down to just say, like, it's biased thinking or discriminatory thinking. That's what I believe, is that if you think that marriage is between a man and a woman, like, and you're trying to play this exclusionary role of same-sex couples not being able to participate in the sanctity of marriage, that's discriminatory. I don't know if I'd call you a bigot. I do think that you would be considered one, but I think there's all this, like, social baggage and, like, linguistic implications that come along with calling somebody a bigot, kind of in the same way as, like, a snowflake. It's like a false equivalency, right? You're either a bigot or a snowflake, and a lot of people's brains shut off when they hear those two words. So even though I would think you might be one of them, I wouldn't say that, but I would just say there's some discriminatory thinking going on here, or an unchecked bias, which is fascinating because it came from a person who came from a same-sex household, but it makes sense. It makes sense.
The equivalent of a racist. And they were not giving any attention to people that had a genuine argument, a well-founded, secular, convincing argument for support of traditional marriage. And so I started blogging anonymously.
I was going to make that point. You started blogging anonymously. What happened? Why did you go public, as it were?
I didn't. I was outed by a gay blogger.
I was outed by a gay blogger. Hilarious. Cheers to the gay blogger, honestly. Doing the Lord's work out here, literally.
Felt like I needed to be held accountable for my stance. And the truth is that I would not have filed a brief with the Supreme Court. I wouldn't be having this interview with you today because I never intended to be involved in the legal fight. But because I was outed in the name of love and tolerance, I am with you today.
Okay, so just going to that Supreme Court decision. In June, Justice Kennedy authored, the same man you wrote to, authored the Supreme Court's decision in favour of same-sex marriage. He began in agreement with you, saying that no union is more profound than marriage. But he said of the gay people who had petitioned the court, it would be to misunderstand these men and women, to say they disrespect the idea of marriage. Their plea is that they respect it so much, respect it so deeply, that they seek to find its fulfilment for themselves. And now, obviously, the court agreed that their dignity was the critical thing here. Why do you disagree with that position?
Well, because they have dignity, right? Single parents have dignity. People that have never been married have dignity. You don't gain dignity by a government bestowing that on you. You just have.
But like, yes, but that's not the same thing. Like, if you have a partner that you would want to be married and one couple can get married and one couple can't get married, I can understand where the idea of dignity comes in here. But her saying that, oh, you're saying that everybody who's not married doesn't have dignity? Like, that's not
It. The question is not whether or not they have dignity. And the question is not even really whether or not they have the capacity to love and commit the way heterosexuals do. They do.
Okay.
They absolutely do.
Okay.
The question is, what is government's interest in marriage? It's really not about affirming the connections that we have with one another.
Okay.
It has to do with the product of those unions. And there's something distinct about the product of a union between heterosexuals. What's distinct is that they make babies, and those babies have rights, and those babies deserve protection.
Oh, girl, you had me, but I fell off at the last moment. What in the world? Okay. Well, okay, babes, that's the end here. Really interesting conversation here today about the preparedness of same-sex couples in order to raise children to the same extent of their non-queer counterparts. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. Were you raised by two moms or two dads or two thements? I don't know. That's what I'm gonna be, is a themint. Don't call me dad. That's weird. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. If you're interested in more from me, there's a Dismantling Hate playlist. This is episode, 52? 53? I don't know. We're in the 50s, girls. So see that playlist if you want to hear more from me. I have a podcast. I have a vlog series called Does Size Matter? You can find me on Instagram and TikTok. I'm doing all this other stuff, girls. So thanks for joining me, and until the next one, goodbye. And like, it is walking the line of like freedom of speech. You know what? If we're gonna be out here and we're gonna be vulnerable on this channel here together, you and me, right now, right here, yeah. We should really be talking about that, because that's harmful. All right, I'm ready. Are you ready? It's okay if you're not. We'll take a deep breath. It's gonna be okay, because we're gonna do it together. Roll the transphobia.